What's up, Trek Nation? Welcome back to After the Snap, and I am your host, Tasha Pierce. We are here today to continue our Worst of Trek series with the second installment of this much anticipated series. Episodes qualify for this series by number one, the series that the episode is contained within must have at least 3 seasons. That means we won't be seeing any Picard, any Lower Decks, or any The Animated Series. Second prime directive of this series is we're going totally by IMDb ratings. So this is not me making the choices, it's the greater fandom making the choices. If more than one series has the same number, meaning that if we have 3 that have a rating of 3, we will review those by original air dates. And as always, if you disagree with any of these selections or think others should be added to the list, sound off in the comments because your opinions matter. Or you can email me at afterthesnap@gmail.com. This episode is brought to you by my lovely patron. So I would like to thank my patron in advance. And if you'd like to be a patron of After the Snap, you can do so at patreon.com/afterthesnap. Now let's get down to business. The second episode in this series, Worst of Trek, comes to us from my favorite iteration of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. It has a 5.6 rating and is the lowest rated episode of DS9. The title of this episode is Let He Who Is Without Sin. As a reminder as to what this episode was about, let's go through the synopsis. A stormy vacation on Risa is the result of Worf's distrust of Dax and his abetment of a man who wants to impose traditional values on the Pleasure Planet. This original air date was 11/11/96, directed by Rene Auberjonois. I never could say his name right. And it's written by Ira Stephen Bear and Hewitt Wolf. First of all, I am really upset that an episode that was directed by Rene Auberjonois, you know who I'm talking about, is the lowest rated one of the entire 7-year run of Deep Space Nine. Second, I honestly didn't like this episode myself. Over the years, I had no connection to this particular episode, but it has gained more relevancy in recent months even. And if you'd like to know how, I feel like this episode could move up the ranks given the last few months and the way things have played out. Just keep watching. Now, I read a lot of reviews about this episode from other people besides myself. And one of the things that was a repeat, I guess, occurrence in those very bad reviews was that, oh, Star Trek is becoming a soap opera. And that's a lot of a lot of the problem that people have with Star Trek Discovery. I don't see it as that, but this is one of those episodes that kind of has drawn their ire, that this is more about the relationship between Dax and Worf. So, as we heard earlier in this episode, Dax and Worf go on vacation together. They initially were going to go to Earth, but Dax convinced Worf to go to Risa. Nothing about Worf says he is going to enjoy taking a vacation, extended or otherwise, to the most hedonistic planet in the Federation. Nothing. But I guess we're going anyway. And we learn that Worf, before this trip, had begun having trust issues with Dax. He doesn't like that she can still be friends with her exes, especially Commander Bode with the see-through scalp, or see-through, what is it? You can see his brain. He's a Galamite. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, he doesn't like that she's still friends with her exes and that she can be impulsive at times and that she doesn't seem to be as serious as he is about their relationship. Now, on the other hand, Dax doesn't like that Worf tries to control her and that he isn't like other Klingons that her previous hosts have known throughout all of these lifetimes. For as much as Worf tries to control Dax's movements, it seems like she's trying to change him as well. Why don't they just break up? Well, because that would make this the shortest episode of Star Trek ever, ever. And besides that, we would have missed out on the progression of their love story, and that would be a big shame if we didn't get to see their coming together and their eventual marriage and the eventual end of their relationship. It was a wonderful story arc that I enjoyed, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Star Trek fans enjoyed watching where that relationship went. Now, remember when Julian Bashir and Leeta the Dabo girl were an item? Yeah, so this episode falls within that. In fact, it falls kind of at the end of their relationship. They ended up joining Dax and Worf on this trip, and then Quark was there also. He wasn't giving Leeta the days off unless he was able to go to Risa with them. So now that's our group. That's who we see going to Risa and having this vacation. Now, further playing into Worf's kind of trust issues, all during this trip, he and Dax were coming up on Bashir and Leeta, and they weren't acting like they were in a relationship. In fact, he would see them, Worf would see them flirting with other people when they weren't together. And this bothered him. Even though Dax was like, mind your own business, this bothered Worf quite a bit. And I guess because he feels like he's the only person in the Federation, it seems, that takes relationships seriously. In fact, I would say Worf is taking this relationship too seriously. If you need to calm his ass down. Now, when Worf confronted Leeta and Bashir about how they dishonor one another by being disloyal to one another, he found out that they weren't there to make their relationship stronger. They were there to break up in an amicable, celebratory way. And because they believed ending this relationship with the Bajoran ritual, in fact, because they didn't end their relationships in the way that Worf is used to seeing relationships end, again, he is judging them by their differences. And like he's kind of forcing other people to look at things through his ideals, and it's not fair. Worf believes that his way of approaching a relationship is the correct way, but everybody does it differently. You know, no two relationships are the same, and that's what makes things exciting and different. If everybody was the same, there wouldn't be no need for relationships. But the part for me that initially I hated, I hated this whole episode in the beginning, but watching it again with fresh eyes, with new circumstances going on socially in the United States, particularly, but possibly even the world, looking at it with those fresh eyes, I'm like, boy, this episode slaps. This episode hits hard, and we're going to discuss why. Because in this other plot, I wouldn't even call this the B plot. It might be the A plot. You choose. It seems the DS9 had their own version of QAnon. See, we met Pascal Fullerton, who is the leader of a group called the New Essentialists. And this movement claims that it is dedicated to restoring the moral and cultural traditions of the Federation. Make the Federation great again. So, amongst other things, he and his followers believe that self-indulgence is making the Federation weak. And they decide that they are going to impose their beliefs on 100,000 tourists of Risa who obviously feel differently. And just like any other time, a situation in your personal life can have you connect with one of these kind of extreme movements. And this is the same thing that happens with Worf. He's having beef with Dax, and he's feeling like she doesn't take things seriously. She's impulsive. She is driven by pleasure. That's bothering him in this episode. So he connects with the New Essentialist movement. He latched on to the part of their ideology that kind of fit with him. And isn't that how people end up joining cults anyway? Well, that and rallies. Yeah, there were lots and lots of rallies. So back to Fullerton. He goes to the pleasure planet to persuade people that they are destroying the Federation by pursuing pleasure. And the native Risians, they allow him to continue to preach because they feel like, hey, he's enjoying himself. And that's what this planet is all about. As long as he's having fun, who are we to stop him? Amazingly, they are showing him tolerance. when he is just spewing intolerance all over this planet. And then get this, just in case you forgot, when Fullerton and the new Essentialists thought that their message was like being ignored or unheard, they took to arms and stormed the Capitol.
The Senate has recessed, we are told, because of the protests, and the Vice President, Mike Pence, who is presiding over the counting of votes and the processing of some of these objections today, is said to be in his office in the Senate. So certainly it does appear that the supporters who were on the mall, who were agitating outside the Capitol building, then moved up the steps and into the building, with Capitol Police now addressing that in front of lawmakers on the House, saying there has been a breach of the Capitol building. Separately,
I mean, the solarium. They stormed the solarium. Now, where have I heard that story before? Now, the Ricians, they cleaned up and kept the party going for their guests of the island, or the planet. I guess it's not even an island, it's a planet. But Worf's jealousy kept eating away at him. And first of all, he's the only person on the planet who's still walking around in this damn Starfleet uniform because Worf. But secondly, he's so jealous that he can't understand that Curzon Dax had a thing with one of the natives of Risa. In fact, Curzon died on Risa in the middle of Jamaharon. You know what I mean? I guess he came and went at the same time. So yeah, there's that. But he couldn't understand that you're dating this person who has all of these different memories from all of these different hosts, but she's still a separate individual. So he feels like his Dax, still kind of wants to kick it with the female Rician that Curzon used to kick it with. So all jealous and all angry, he rigs a tricorder. So he rigs a tricorder to knock out the power grid that controls the weather, amongst other things, on the planet. And then he gave that tricorder to Fullerton, the leader of the new Essentialists. Now, the natural climate of Risa is all the time rainy, but that power grid is keeping it at a balmy 83 degrees with a nice warm breeze going through so that nobody gets hot. And it's for optimal tourist comfort. So they have designed this planet to be a tourist attraction. The native population exists to basically accommodate all of the people who are vacationing from all the corners of the Federation, and they have an open attitude about peace because they don't allow weapons and that sort of thing on their planet. But here, this new essentialist movement has brought these weapons to their solarium. They're not sexually repressed. They're very open sexually. But here, this stuffy ass group with their stiff ass leader decides that instead of going somewhere else, you have this feeling that this is the way you choose to live your life, in this stuffy, stiff manner. That's fine. Why would you go to a planet that you know that the native population is very open and free with their sexuality? Why would you bring your ass to their planet and expect for them to live like you? So anyway, after Worf gives him this rigged ass tricorder, Fullerton and his new essentialists commit the second terroristic act against the population of Risa. They sabotage the power grid. And now Worf only intended for them to use this tricorder to make it rain on them hoes. Worf only intended for them to use the tricorder to make it rain. But Fullerton upped the ante when he brought down the seismic regulators. So that created earthquakes across the entire planet. And that was putting people's lives in peril. Those buildings were threatening to come down because of what Fullerton did. And now after some type of, I forgot how the mayhem that ensued made Worf see the error in his ways. I think it was when he had a heart-to-heart, and it was a very quick heart-to-heart with Dax, and he explained to her why he was so super stuffy, and she explained to him that she is who she is, and there's not a whole bunch he's going to do to change that, but she loves him, and he loves her, and kumbaya. Now, we've got this problem, and the whole planet is shaking. So what you going to do, Worf? So now Worf wants to go back to Fullerton and say, hey, give me that tricorder, because this is not what we agreed upon. Fullerton is like, oh no, you trying to switch sides now? And he slaps Worf, and Worf picks his ass up and throws him across the room. They use the tricorder to stop the earthquakes and to fix the climate after ruining so many people's vacations, including their own. And then they went back to work like none of this shit happened. Now, my question is this. Shouldn't Worf have faced some type of repercussions for aiding and abetting this insurrection? Well, actually, no. It seems like the next week everything was forgotten. Now, that's one of the things that I kind of like about Discovery, which is next week there might have been some type of repercussions for what happened. If that was Burnham instead of Worf, she would have had to pay some type of price. And that's what happens when everything is tightly serialized. But then we also would not have gotten this Risa episode if we were in Discovery, possibly. And that's what I like about the loose anthological way that Star Trek has been in the past. So, we got in DS9, we've got the marriage of both things. And I think they did an incredible job of marrying those two ideas of the serialized nature and the anthological nature that we were used to. I'll be glad when we get back to it. And one of the ways we're going to get back to it is in Strange New Worlds. And I digress. We're supposed to be talking about what we think about this, the worst episode or the worst rated episode of Deep Space Nine. Like I said, this one was a 5.6 and maybe possibly out of 10. I'm sorry. This one was a 5.6 out of 10 and maybe possibly, had you asked me some years ago, I wouldn't have given it a score this low. Probably a 7 out of 10. Simply because it's a Deep Space Nine episode and I loved Deep Space Nine. But now today, with the relevance, with the way that this kind of fits into what we have come to learn or come to accept as some normal 2021-ish, this right here, this episode is relevant again. And it's relevant in a different way. We are now looking at things as, look at this whole insurrection that Worf caused, and he's not paying any price for it. And these people are trying to impose their beliefs on the other side. And I'm not preaching at MAGAs or the QAnons, believe what you believe, but you can't force it on other people, especially when it's illogical. Now, that also goes for liberals. It also goes for people who are ultra neoliberal, who want to force everyone and compartmentalize everyone into that group. There's something good about every person and their ideologies. We can pick something good out of each one. But when you staunchly decide that I'm on this side and I'm going to die on this side, sometimes you got to accept a whole lot of bullshit and make an excuse for that bullshit to be correct when you know it's not. When you know it's not. And this is how Worf ended up in the position that he was in. He knew that these people were radical. He knew that these people were wrong on many different fronts. But because his personal life allowed him to latch on to one single piece of their ideology, now you bought yourself into all the rest of the garbage that comes with it. And this is why I cannot hate this episode anymore. I mean, I don't know. Star Trek knows what it's doing at times. It is it prognosticates what we will see in the future. This one was made in 1996 and it became completely relevant again in 2021. Amazing to me. And you may not agree with me. And I hope that if you don't agree with me, that we can talk about it in the comments below. I am welcoming anyone's opinion. But I'm telling you, this is the first thing that came to my mind as I was watching this episode. It was that, wow, this sounds familiar, So let me know what you think. Tell me what you think about let he who has what is the name of it? Let he who was without sin. Let me know what you think about this episode down in the comments below. And if you've not yet done so, I'm going to make the request. Please subscribe to the channel. The channel is growing at an exponential rate, and it is not because of my Star Trek content. So if you'd like to see more Star Trek content, if you'd like for me to continue this series even, please hit the like button and make a comment so that I know that you all like this type of content. Also, I've made the invitation about Patreon before, but if you'd like to financially support the show, I'm gonna take your money. That's just it. I'm gonna accept your money. You can do that at patreon.com/afterthesnap, and I appreciate anyone in advance. But basically, the way that you help the show the most is by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I appreciate it. Truly, truly do. Join me here next week. We will be continuing this crazy, crazy series of the worst of Trek. And yeah, next week is a doozy. And if you guys have already been over on on IMDb and you know what's coming up next, oh my goodness, this one is bad. But okay, join me here again next week as we continue with the third installment of this series. And with all that being said, I appreciate you once again for joining me, and still live long and prosper. Peace.